years because of Brexit. Are we facing a brain drain? London is full of unused spaces that could be put to good use, according to a new report by the Centre for London. 24,000 commercial properties in London are currently empty. So how can they be transformed into shops, community projects or even temporary housing? Bhavani Vadi reports.
It offers food from around the world, has hosted a performance from grime music star Stormzy, as well as been the scene of World Cup mania. But this venue, which describes itself as the world's first pop-up mall, is not a permanent structure. It has a 5-year lease and is known as a meanwhile site. That's a location that can host an interim activity while waiting for full development.
This site has been vacant for 25 years, had various different missions, various different schemes, and always had a key part in the future of Croydon as a commercial destination. We've been able to bring this site forward because it's a collaboration between the council, the GLA and the developer Schroders, and by putting us on this site for a temporary basis on a peppercorn rent, on a small rent, we've managed to unlock the rest of the development sites.
The Boxpark in Croydon is one of 51 projects in London operating from a meanwhile site. That is a space awaiting redevelopment or to be put to another use. And although this type of temporary enterprise has grown dramatically in the capital over the last decade, many of London's empty spaces aren't being used to their full potential. According to a recent report from the Centre for London, nearly 23,000 commercial properties in the capital have been empty for at least 6 months. And 2,700 hectares of land, that's roughly the same size as the whole borough of Lambeth, has planning permission, but construction has yet to start. The think tank wants councils to publish a register of empty commercial spaces, as well as a range of other measures to help increase the use of vacant properties.
Another thing is kind of helping that cultural change in the property industry. And I think that's something for the Mayor of London to do. For instance, create a competition for some of those sites that are publicly owned and say, we will award the site for a peppercorn rent for 5 years if you come up with the best idea for this site. And that's giving meanwhile activity visibility. If they can also introduce a process for these temporary spaces to get planning permission and licensing a bit more easily.
There are also around 7,000 people living as property guardians in meanwhile spaces being used as temporary housing. Eugene Clark is one of them and has just moved into this former school in Coulsdon.
You save money, obviously. I'm not earning as much these days as I used to. The reality is you've got a roof over your head for a period of time. It's usually 3 months, 6 months. Sometimes it can go longer.
Eugene was placed here by the social enterprise ... property.
I think that getting empty buildings into use for meanwhile housing, for property guardianship, is a great solution for a lot of people and actually for a lot of buildings because it keeps them safe. It's not a whole solution to the housing crisis though. It's not going to work for the people who are the most vulnerable. It's not a good idea for families. It's great for people who would otherwise be in the private rented sector.
But there are some concerns over the use of meanwhile sites for housing.
Particularly on the housing side of things, this is a very grey area. There aren't really any rules governing the rights that renters have when they act as property guardians for empty spaces. And the government hasn't up to now been very interested in regulating that. We're hoping that we can change their minds.
So with this much unused space in a city where land and housing costs are at a premium, can government at all levels act to unlock this potential for the benefit of Londoners?
Well, joining us now is the Lambeth Council Cabinet Member for Planning, Investment and New Homes, Councillor Matthew Bennett. Sounds like a big job. Yeah. So your council is